Hello, everybody. This begins our third session of Professional English. This time we are going to talk about writing, and the material that I'm using comes from a free module online called Writing Skills for Business English. It is available as a set of 4 PDFs, and later I will tell you where to get it online. But for now, I hope that this session will be helpful for you in introducing you to the ideas and concepts that are taught in this module. So the first module talks about basic grammar, and I'm going to cover part of that first module in this session, the parts about using a dictionary and applying punctuation rules. These appear to be basic, simple, foundational rules and ideas, but you would be surprised at how many people write very complicated sentences and learn English for a long time yet do not understand these rules. So I hope that by the end of today, you will understand these rules of punctuation and you will be confident in using a dictionary in order to look up words that you don't know and in order to learn new words. So when and why do we use a dictionary? You use a dictionary in any situation where you're not sure what the word you are reading or seeing means. Or if you're thinking of using a word, it's good to check it up in a dictionary first to make sure that the word is appropriate for the context or the situation or the person to which you're going to apply it. How do you use a dictionary? Some of you would have seen me use the Google function, but I will demonstrate it very shortly. What Google really does is the Google web page searches all the internet pages and comes up with a definition that it thinks you can trust. So when you look at the definition that Google gives you, you should also check the source. Where did this definition come from? And generally, definitions of words that are offered by reliable sources such as Collins, Merriam-Webster, Cambridge, Oxford, or even dictionary.com, these are quite reliable. Usually, if the definition is provided by a website that is associated by a university or by a government body, then it is quite reliable. Those that come from blogs or other websites that are not authorized, you want to be a bit careful. You want to check with somebody, say your mentor or an English teacher, before you use those definitions. So now I'm going to show you how to use Google to find the definition of a word. Let's say that I read or I hear about a new word and I'm not sure what that word means. Let's say that I hear the word scintillate and I've never seen this word before. I don't know what this word means. I just type define colon scintillate and then I press enter and Google will show me that scintillate will mean to sparkle in a figurative sense, to be lively or to perform brilliantly. And you can see that this definition is given to me by merriam-webster.com, which is a reliable dictionary. Brilliantly, lively, stimulating, or witty. And you can see that the Cambridge English Dictionary also gives me another definition. And if I wanted to go in there, I would click the Cambridge English Dictionary. And if you click on this, let's see if you can hear it. Scintillate. Scintillate. So you see that if you click on this little loudspeaker, you will hear somebody pronouncing it right. And there's all kinds of words, related words, which are useful to learn when you're studying vocabulary and learning new words. And there's examples of how you use that word in a sentence. And you can do this for almost any word that you come across. That is the define function. Okay, if you wanted to find a word that is like scintillate, then what you need is a thesaurus. And if you click on thesaurus up here on the top of the screen, and I type this word scintillate, the thesaurus doesn't have a different word for scintillate, but that's okay. I can go back to Google. You can just type it in the address bar, but I want to make it more obvious for you. So I'm going to type it in the Google search form. And if you say synonym, scintillate, synonym, scintillate. A synonym is a word that means the same thing as the word that you're describing. So, for example, similar words, these are all synonyms of scintillate. Sparkle, shine, gleam, glitter, flash, shimmer, twinkle, glint, glisten, wink, blink, glister, coruscate, and fulgurate, which I've never actually seen before. There you go. So you now know the meaning of the word scintillate, and you also know about 10 different words that you could use instead of this word scintillate. Great. Okay. Let's go back to our PowerPoint. Now, we've talked about using a dictionary and how you can use a dictionary to look up words that you don't know before you use a new word. You can use a dictionary to check that you're using it in the correct way. This is really important for learning any language. Now, the second part of our session is about punctuation. And what do I mean by punctuation? We're talking about the full stops or periods, the question marks, the commas, the semicolons, the colons, the apostrophes, and not to forget the brackets or parentheses. So these dots and squiggles that I have shown in black are the punctuation marks in English. And knowing how to use punctuation marks properly is really important for making sure that your reader understands what you're trying to say. It's also very important for writing in a professional way. And I will tell a story to explain, to illustrate how that is so. So have you seen this animal before? It is a panda. They come from China and they are very expensive, and many zoos all over the world keep 1 or 2 pandas because they are very rare. Pandas eat shoots of plants, the dikin of plants, and the leaves, the aitahan of plants. And there's a funny story. Well, I guess the people who tell the story think it's funny. There's a story about a panda. So one day a panda walks into a bar. He orders a sandwich, eats it, and then draws a gun and fires 2 shots in the air. Piang piang. Why? Why are you behaving in this strange, unpanda-like fashion? Asks the confused waiter as the panda walks towards the exit. The panda produces a badly punctuated wildlife manual and tosses it over his shoulder. I'm a panda, he says at the door. Look it up. The waiter turns to the relevant entry and sure enough finds an explanation. Panda, large, black and white bear-like mammal, native to China, eats, shoots, and leaves. So it is funny because I don't know that it's funny, but it's funny because the punctuation was put wrongly in this sentence, because the sentence should have read eats, shoots, and leaves, because the panda eats shoots and the panda eats leaves. But the sentence had a comma in it, so the panda mistakenly thought that what he is supposed to do is eat, then he's supposed to shoot with a gun, and then he is supposed to leave. Haha. Thank you. So, punctuation. Let's talk about a few common punctuation marks. The apostrophe. Okay, so the apostrophe is above the letter, and you add an apostrophe to show that something belongs to someone. Okay, you add the apostrophe after someone's name or something to show that it's a property. So you would call this a noun. So Charles, the friend belongs to Charles, so it's Charles's friend. The poems were written by Pedro or are owned by Pedro, so Pedro's poems. The whiskers belong to the cat, so the cat's whiskers. And the Lord Jesus says in the Gospel of Matthew, it is not right to take the children's bread and throw it to the dogs. But there are two exceptions to this rule. Okay? When you are referring to people's names, people who lived a very long time ago and who are who came from a very ancient time. So you call this an ancient proper noun. When you're referring to people's names, then you don't put a apostrophe s, you just put an apostrophe. What do I mean? Say names like Moses and Jesus. When Simon Peter saw it, he fell down at Jesus' knees, saying, "Depart from me, for I am a sinful man, O Lord." This is in the Gospel of Luke. So you don't say Jesus's with a apostrophe and then an S. You just say Jesus's, and then you put the apostrophe. Don't need to put the S. Moses's father-in-law said to him, "What you are doing is not good," from the book of Exodus. And in the book of Matthew, "Blessed are those who are persecuted for righteousness' sake." If you want to rephrase this, you would say, "Blessed are those who are persecuted for the sake of righteousness." But the way that the Bible puts it is persecuted for righteousness' sake, and it's righteousnesses with an apostrophe, no S. Okay, this is the first exception. The second exception is that I said that you use the apostrophe when something belongs to someone, right? But when the someone is plural, is many someones, okay? Then you do not put an apostrophe S. What do? You put just an apostrophe. If you are asking, what are our nurses' role in keeping patients safe? All the nurses of Maluk Timor, what is their role collectively together as one group of nurses? What is their role in keeping patients safe? So I would not say nurses apostrophe sis. This is a plural, it's a group of nurses. So what are our nurses' role in keeping patients safe? If you think this sentence sounds really weird and really strange, you can try to rephrase it. Then you can ask a question like, what is the role of the nursing community in keeping patients safe? Or what is the role of the nurses when it comes to keeping patients safe? So English is it's a language where you can rearrange things. If you look at it and the sentence doesn't look correct, or if you write the sentence and Microsoft Word tells you that your grammar is not correct, you can always change the structure or move the parts of the sentence around so that it is grammatically correct. Okay. Another example, the manager's office cannot be accessed by other staff. How many managers are there? There's more than one manager. If there was only one manager, it would be the manager's apostrophe S office. Then that's the one manager and other staff cannot access his office. But if it's the manager's office, then maybe the finance manager is there, the HR manager is there, the general manager is there in the same office, and that office cannot be accessed by other staff. Okay, so that's the apostrophe and how to use it. What about the comma? So the comma is like the apostrophe, but it is at the bottom of the line and not the top, not floating at the top of the line. You use commas for quite a lot of things. You use commas to introduce a quotation. What, Dersia asked, do you expect me to do about it? So you see that the comma is introducing a quotation which is you're repeating what Dersia said to Tiago. And Tiago replied, I don't know, but something must be done. Okay, so use commas to introduce a quotation. When you're linking 3 or more terms, add a comma after each term except the last. Let me give you an example. Our flag is red, comma, yellow, comma, and black. See, you didn't put a comma after the black, right? Because the sentence is finished. Is it an animal, comma, vegetable, comma, or mineral? Question mark. and this is a sentence with 4 terms, with 4 items. He opened the envelope, comma, took out the letter, comma, read it, comma, and made a note of its contents. Note that you have to have a joining word before the last term, and, or, and. So you call this a conjunctive or conjunction. It doesn't matter. Don't worry about what we call it right now, but just to know that when you're listing things, you do have to put a joining word just before you put the final word to show that you're about to finish the sentence. Okay? Use a pair of commas in the middle of a sentence to separate a phrase or word from the rest of the sentence. Let me give you an example. The best way to see a country, comma, unless you are pressed for time, comma, is to travel on foot. You could remove the middle bit and the sentence would still make sense. You could say the best way to see a country is to travel on foot. You could also use brackets or parentheses and it would make sense as well. The best way to see a country, bracket, unless you are pressed for time, close bracket, is to travel on foot. And another example, my brother, you will be pleased to hear, is now in perfect health. If you want to use a comma here to separate this middle bit, you'll be pleased to hear, then you have to use a pair of commas. You can't just put one comma. If you put it in brackets, it would read like this. My brother, you will be pleased to hear, close bracket, is now in perfect health. Now, if you were to remove this whole middle bit of the sentence, my brother is now in perfect health. That's a good sentence. That's a complete sentence. Okay, so you use a pair of commas in the middle of a sentence when you want to separate a phrase or word from the rest of the sentence. The rest of the sentence has to make sense by itself. You are just adding extra details. What else do you use a comma for? Commonly, we use a comma to link an introductory phrase with another sentence. What do I mean? This is an introductory phrase, and then this is another sentence. We will plan for the presentation. This is one sentence. The introductory phrase is, once you have completed the proposal, we will plan for the presentation. So we know that you have to complete the proposal first, and then we will plan for the presentation. So there's your comma. Although the situation is dangerous, comma, there is still one chance of escape. This sentence stands alone. There is still one chance of escape, but you're adding the additional information that although the situation is dangerous, there is still one chance of escape. Exceptions. When do you not use a comma to link a phrase or a sentence with another sentence? You can't do this if the first phrase is already grammatically complete. For example, this is wrong. It is nearly 6 p.m. We cannot reach Delhi before dark. In this case, you want to use a semicolon, not a colon. So a semicolon is like a, use a semicolon and not a comma, sorry. So a semicolon is a dot and then a comma. You don't use just a comma. It is nearly 6 p.m. semicolon. We cannot reach Delhi before dark. And another thing that you need to know is that you use the semicolon to separate clauses when there is no conjunction. Remember, I said just now a conjunction is a joining word. So a leader must be decisive. She cannot hesitate. This is not grammatically correct because if you use comma, you need a joining word. A leader must be decisive, comma, and she cannot hesitate. This would be correct. Or if you want, you use a semicolon. A leader must be decisive, semicolon, she cannot hesitate. So when you're using a semicolon, you don't need to put a conjunction or a joining word into the sentence. So, but if you're going to put a comma, then you must have a joining word. A leader must be decisive, comma, and she cannot hesitate. Or if you're really not sure and this is giving you a headache, then just break the sentence up into two and it's not wrong. A leader must be decisive, full stop, she cannot hesitate. It makes perfect sense. Okay, lastly, this is another way that you can use a semicolon. When a series of sentences, when a series of terms already contains commas, lots of commas, you can use the semicolon to further separate the parts of your sentence. For example, long speeches were made by Dr. Ribeiro, the director, Mr. Pereira, the treasurer, and Ms. Suarez, the secretary general. So what you're doing here is that you are condensing a paragraph, because actually what you're trying to say is long speeches were made by Dr. Ribeiro, who is the director. Long speeches were made a long speech was made by Mr. Pereira, who is the treasurer, and a long speech was made by Ms. Suarez, the secretary general. So what you're doing is that you're putting it all together and showing that the long speeches were made by these people, and these were their positions. This other person, and this was his position, and this lady, and this was her position. You want to be a bit careful with this. If you're not sure, it's always better to check it out. Check with a mentor or check with a teacher to see whether the sentence that you're writing, whether the semicolons are really being used in the way that you think they are. Useful to know, but not necessary for good writing. Okay, so we talked about semicolons, we talked about commas, we talked about apostrophes. Now we're going to talk about the colon. So the semicolon is a dot and a comma, and the colon is 2 dots. So we see this quite often. People use colons after a complete statement to introduce one or more directly related ideas. The names of the 12 apostles are these: Simon, called Peter, and Andrew, his brother. Notice the use of a semicolon here. The writer is trying to tell you that he's breaking up this long list of 12 disciples into 2 pairs of 2 pairs of 2 pairs of 2, well, 6 pairs. James, the son of Zebedee, and John, his brother, Philip and Bartholomew, Thomas and Matthew, the tax collector, James, the son of Alphaeus and Thaddeus, Simon the Zealot, and Judas Iscariot, who betrayed him. So the names of the 12 apostles are these, colon, and then he introduces a list of 12 apostles. Use colon after a complete statement to introduce more than one directly related ideas. Here's another example. Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, for you tithe mint and dill and cumin and have neglected the weightier matters of the law. What are the weightier matters of the law? There's a list here: justice and mercy and faithfulness, full stop. These you ought to have done, comma, without neglecting the others. So note the use of punctuation and how this helps you understand what the sentence and what this verse is about. Ooh, now it's your turn. Yes, actually we're almost done. The next part is for you to go to this link, website forms.gle. I have shortened the link for you, so you can just go to http://tiny.cc/mteng1. You can go to either of these links and fill in a short quiz to make sure that you consolidate your learning, to make sure that you've understood what we've talked about today. I recommend using a laptop or computer for this because you need to type. And if you have done it, congrats. Now sign your attendance at this form. You can either use this long form or you can use this link. It's the same link. And the password for today is PANDA, panda. Let me move it up. Let me make sure that you can see it. Panda, okay? You can get all the resources that I mentioned here at this website, tiny.cc MT English Books. It should bring you to a Google Drive. Make sure that you are signed in using your Maluk Timor email address so that you can access it. And please contact me if you cannot access it. I will send out all these links in one page later. That's all. Congratulations and see you in the office.